Hey Saiko, do you want to learn Kung Fu from the masters of martial arts? Well, to do so, we're gonna have to join a revolution and help fight off an evil admiral bent on destroying the Empire. So let's start our journey into Kung Fu mastery by reviewing Forestrike. Forestrike takes place during the age of emperors and Kung Fu masters. And for this game, in this world, a particular emperor has been brainwashed by an evil admiral who worm-tongued his way into the emperor's trust. Under the evil admiral's influence, the emperor turned away from his people and allowed corruption and destruction to spread throughout his empire. With the region in decline and hoodlums and bandits scavenging and terrorizing all corners of the countryside, the only hope is for you to fight your way through the hordes of ne'er-do-wells and make your way to the capital and remove the admiral from power. The hero of this journey is you. Well, you are the hero in the game, but the character you'll play is also you. He's the youngest practitioner of the Forestrike, and under the guidance of several Kung Fu masters, you, both the character and player, will learn new martial arts techniques that will help fight off baddies, defeat the admiral, and bring peace to your world. Combat in the game is simple. You have a light attack, a heavy attack, and later you can learn to dodge and guard and even perform special moves like the lightning strike. But instead of being a straight up brawler, the combat plays more like a tactical strategy game, almost like chess. This is because of the game's namesake, the Forestrike. You see, the premise behind the Forestrike is that before a fight officially takes place, you have the option to play out the entire battle scenario in your mind's eye. So you get to try out different attack patterns at infinitum to see which one works best for any given situation. Now this might sound like you're simply playing the level over and over until you beat it. So how is it any different than any other game with unlimited lives? Well, the catch is that after you've perfected your combat moves in the Forestrike mode, you still have to do it one more time during the actual fight. And if you mess up your timing or forget a step and lose, it's game over. There were multiple times where I used the Forestrike to figure out the perfect combination of moves to take down all the baddies, only to activate the real fight, mistime my first attack, and immediately get my ass kicked and lose the game. And once you lose, unless you have a very rare item that gives you a second chance, you're taken back to the monastery and all the techniques you learned, all the items you gathered, are lost. It's a harsh punishment for making a mistake, but it does make things pretty fun and tense, because even the simplest encounters can lead you to making a misstep that throws off your entire strategy. To make the process of beating up enemies with little to no mistakes slightly easier, the game offers you upgrades in the form of techniques. Some techniques can unlock new combos for you to perform, but the majority are passive upgrades like the flat of the blade technique, which makes it that whenever you break a weapon upon your enemy, they're automatically stunned. The techniques are cool because as you learn more and more of them, you'll eventually unlock a set of moves and passive upgrades that do change the gameplay and your tactics quite a bit. You'll never feel overpowered or godlike, which isn't necessarily a good thing, but more on that later. But you will feel more powerful and capable as your technique list grows. While the majority of techniques are purely good and improve your combat abilities, there are a couple that might cause more harm than good. For instance, there's a technique called the Peacekeeper. With it applied, your character will automatically cancel and equip the first weapon he gets attacked by. This is pretty powerful as some bad guys have throwing weapons like rocks or spears, and being able to automatically catch the first one thrown to you without taking on damage is great. However, the upgrade to Peacekeeper, Peacekeeper Plus, simply says that weapons inflict no damage. I assumed that meant my character would no longer be harmed by weapons, which is pretty awesome, so I excitedly applied the upgrade. But lo and behold, when it says weapons inflict no damage, it means all weapons inflict no damage on all characters. Meaning enemies couldn't hurt me with their weapons, but I couldn't use weapons to hurt them either. Worst yet, I only realized this invulnerability loop in one stage where I had only one health point left, and I was stuck fighting a bad guy who had spikes on his belly, so he could only be hit from a distance if I wanted to avoid taking on damage. Well, the only way I could attack from a distance was with the bounty of weapons the level had happened to have. But because of the upgraded Peacekeeper, the weapons wouldn't hurt him. I tried at least a dozen times to figure out a way to kill that spiked butthead without taking damage. Damage I couldn't spare, but I couldn't. The Peacekeeper Plus upgrade screwed me, and it ended my run. So learning new techniques is fun and it's a great gameplay mechanic overall, but there's definitely some oddness to some of the upgrades. Now that I've talked about how the game generally plays, I want to talk about its overarching gameplay. And by that I'm referring to its roguelike or roguelite or whatever it's called elements. Forestrike plays very similarly to games like The Binding of Isaac and Rogue Legacy, in that there's no saving your game in the middle of a run. You either have to beat it or die and start all over with your items and power-ups reset. I love these types of games. I've logged more than 100 hours on The Binding of Isaac, which for me is a lot, and I'm pretty sure I've done the same for Rogue Legacy. So this style of permadeath gaming is totally my jam. However, I feel Forestrike fails on 2 points. I think they're small in scale but big on impact, and in my opinion, they prevent Forestrike from reaching the heights of games like The Binding of Isaac. The first mistake Forestrike does is that it takes too long to restart your run after dying. There's a whole post-death stats screen, and then you reappear at the monastery, and then sometimes characters will start talking to you and continuing the story even though you didn't complete your run, so why is the story advancing? And then you have to walk through a couple of screens before you can reselect a new master and try again. This might seem trivial, but I believe these types of games should follow the design philosophy of The Binding of Isaac co-creator Edmund McMillen. You see, before he co-created The Binding of Isaac, Edmund actually helped bring to life another indie darling called Super Meat Boy. And when creating that game, he realized when you design difficult levels that players are expected to retry dozens of times, much like in Forestrike, the best thing you can do for the player is reduce the amount of effort it takes to retry a level. In Super Meat Boy, as soon as you die, you almost instantly restart the level so you can try again. In The Binding of Isaac, it's only a single click to restart your run. But with Forestrike, it takes way too much effort to restart a run. All they needed was a retry button immediately after death. Now, this is obviously a small nitpick, but the fact that I noticed it and even got mildly frustrated at times with how long it took me to restart a run makes me think others would feel the same. My next complaint deals with the fact that Forestrike has no permanence when it comes to the techniques you learn, nor does it have super rare but uber strong godlike techniques to learn either. In my opinion, it should have had at least one of those features. Take The Binding of Isaac. Like Forestrike, it has no permanence of stats or power-ups. Once you die, you have to restart with nothing in your next run. But in The Binding of Isaac, it's fully possible the upgrades you find can make your little Isaac practically into a god. I don't have footage of this, you'll just have to trust me, but I recall having an Isaac run where I had devil wings so I could fly across gaps, I had powerful and large teardrops the size of Isaac's head, and they were exploding tears too. I was destroying bad guys and bosses like nobody's business. It was an awesome run that I still remember to this day. So even though you always start from scratch in The Binding of Isaac, the fact that you can practically become a god through random happenstance keeps all the deaths in between those runs exciting and worth it. But in Forestrike, there's no technique or set of techniques that really change the game into a sort of easy or godlike mode. Even with a really nice set of techniques applied, you're still one or two goof-ups away from dying. And knowing there's no chance of the game just flipping difficulty, like in Isaac, did kill a lot of my desire to play over and over. Now, if the developers didn't want to overpower the player, they could have taken the Rogue Legacy route. In Rogue Legacy, like the other games, once you die you have to start again with nothing, except you get to keep the gold you collected during your previous run. With that gold you can purchase upgrades that apply a permanent improvement to your base character stats. So at first your little knight totally sucks and dies immediately from basically everything, but as you collect gold and purchase upgrades, your little weakling becomes stronger and stronger, and eventually you level up enough to really take on a crazy amount of bad guys and challenges. It's awesome, and that style of progression and slow but continuous growth kept me coming back to Rogue Legacy over and over. But Forestrike doesn't have any of that. Even after I completed an entire run with one of the Kung Fu masters, the game just brought me back to the temple so I could do it all again with another master. I feel it would have been nice to allow the techniques to be pre-applied based on the number of completed runs you've done with your masters. So if you completed one run with a master, you then get to pre-apply one technique before subsequent runs. And for each different master you complete a run with, you get one extra technique you can pre-apply until you have a total of 5 technique slots after completing runs with all 5 masters. Since none of the techniques are overpowered, having 1 to 5 pre-applied for a run isn't exactly going to break the game's balance, but it would have been a nice reward for completing a run, and it would have allowed you to slowly configure the base moves of your character to ones you really liked using. As it is now, once you perfect the moves of one master, you basically have to start all over when you switch, which can feel like a bit of a buzzkill when your combat experience doesn't really map over. Now again, both of these issues may not seem like much, but I do think they add up to more than the sum of their proverbial parts, and at least for me, they keep Forestrike from being the addicting gotta play one more time type of game it was meant to be. Whatever qualms I have with the gameplay or features I feel are missing, I think the graphics are simply wonderful. It's 2D sprites done right. I feel lots of indie games are embracing the retro pixel art aesthetic, and I'm all for it. The character animations are smooth and bring life and personality to the good guys and bad guys alike. There's a lot of variety and small details in every movement, and each strike against a foe feels like it has impact and power. Even the environments look great. They have layers of background and foreground elements, and lots of small details that make them feel real and populated and of the era. Everything is just done really well. In my opinion, it's a masterclass in clean and effective sprite art that brings its world and characters alive. Forestrike has a lot going for it. There are moments I had fun with it, even moments I had a lot of fun with it. I genuinely enjoy the Forestrike mechanic. It's creative, it's inventive, it's fun. And it's surprising how tense things can get once you click to initiate the real fight. Even after using the Forestrike mode to practice a dozen times, the further along you are in the game, the more nervous you get about screwing things up. It walks that line of being challenging and frustrating, but for the most part, it stays on the challenging side of things. However, the challenge can tilt to frustration when you realize there's no persistence in any of the techniques you learned, even if you complete a run. And when you have to start all over again for the umpteenth time because of a tiny mistake, knowing it's always going to be a grind through every run because no technique will save you and there's no XP or techniques to persist across runs, the excitement does eventually leave. It's because of that I'm giving the game a 3.5 out of 5. This easily could have been a 4.5 or even a 5 out of 5 game for me if they had been more considerate to the player experience. I'm all for hard games that take 100 tries to beat, but after I beat it, if you expect me to do it again, let alone 4 times over, I need more justification than just some tweaks to the gameplay. Allowing the player to persist techniques across runs not only would have made the game more replayable, but it also matched the theme of the world better. It really makes no sense in this world that after learning all those kung fu techniques and completing a run, i.e. not dying, you simply forget everything you learned. The way one becomes a kung fu master is by learning and perfecting techniques over a long course of time. So why can't our little kung fu character actually learn and remember at least some of the techniques? How is he ever going to become a master if his memory resets after every major battle, even when he wins? I wish I could say Forestrike is the next Binding of Isaac, but unfortunately I feel it falls short. That being said, if you're a fan of these types of games, this might be the game for you. The Kung Fu world is great, the graphics are fantastic, the Forestrike gameplay feature is really fun, and maybe you won't be a stick in the mud like me and complain about everything resetting all the time. I fully believe there are many of you who will play this game and fall in love with it. There's really a lot to like about it, and if you're the type of person that feels the accomplishment of completing a run is in fact the reward, then Forestrike might just be your jam. But for those who are like me, who don't think achievement notifications are a reward enough, and actually want the game to reward your time and investment and accomplishments with more power, then you might still enjoy this game, at least until you complete your first run. After that, it'll be hit or miss if you want to play any further. But completing that first run could take upwards of 10 hours, so if that sounds worth it to you, give it a shot.